The first project on me.
Well, that's good.
Somebody needs to.
Hey, can we have,
Yeah.
can we have quiet?
No.
We want to call this to order and get going, because I don't know how long some of the Zoom guys.
We were never quiet at practice. Why should we start now?
Yes. All right, are people gonna have a seat here? How's this gonna play out?
That's what I had it in here for, but
Yeah.
nobody wants to sit
Well,
down,
it'd be,
so-
I think it'd be good if people sat down and.
All right.
I was just trying to figure it out so the people on the Zoom can look and see who's here.
Right.
Right.
Well, that, as we go through, we'll identify that. By the way. So,
Yeah, the camera gets turned on. All I gotta do is, you gotta move the,
Yeah, just turn the computer screen just a little.
there you go, there you go. That'll be it. That'll catch everybody.
okay,
So, Dean.
it's good to have some of the team members here too, by the way. We've not met them all, but it's got.
They're not all back yet from the summer, but.
Right, Coach Chumley, thank you so much for hosting this. For those of you that don't know, I'm Tom Condit, and I walked on to Western's team in the fall of '74 when we just happened to be the NCAA runner-up. And 3 years later, I was team captain of this incoming freshman class of 1977, which we really wanted to celebrate that team here this weekend. And unfortunately, not everyone that wanted to come could be here, and some of you are on Zoom. So hopefully everyone can hear everybody. And let me tell you what my goal here is. Joe Tinius is in the house, because I wanted to tie together some history for posterity's sake. We had a real good reunion back in 1999 where we were able to record interviews of a lot of guys on that team, and that's of record already. But I wanted to try, for purposes of history, to tie together, everything up through this freshman class of 1977. Most of them graduated and left, after the 1980-81 season, and that capped a 7-year period where we went to the NCAA 6 times. Is that right? I'm sorry. Or maybe an 8-year period where we went 7 times.
7 out of 8, I believe.
7 out of 8.
73 to 8.
77 didn't qualify.
So Joe, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, so we, in the end, whether we'll get into a nice historical flow of a video, I'm not sure, but we hope we can do that eventually. But I asked Joe to come and just give a short summation, since he came in 1972, right, as a freshman, a short summation of what started the ball rolling for this great 8-year period with Hector Ortiz and Swag, and how it kind of grew from there. And take us up to fall of '74, Joe. Why don't you come up here where you'd be a little closer to the camera?
Basically, what Tom's saying, I'm the oldest one here. That's basically what he's saying.
Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't here, to let you know how you find out how old you are, when they start tearing down a building that was the newest building on campus when you arrive, you know you're old. And they're tearing down college. That was the shiny new building when I arrived. So yes, I'm old. So Hector Ortiz, to my knowledge, was the first really outstanding distance runner, first All-American distance runner here at WKU. And he came here in 1968, fall of 1968, and then graduated in May of '72. And Hector, I believe, was All-American, I think twice in cross country and once on the track. And I think probably really opened the door to distance running for the next 12 to 13 years here at WKU. I mean, as far as I know, he's the only runner that has a course around town named after him. I don't know if any of the young guys here ever run Hector's, but it's a 5-mile loop through town. It is what we ran basically every morning before class, and where we started our route, usually most afternoons. But Hector Hector ran that 2 and 3 times a day sometimes. It was great talking with Swag today at lunch. I learned a little bit more about another Englishman named Ian Whittle, who I knew he was here. Swag Hartel and Ian Whittle both came from England in the fall of 1970. Swag was a junior national 800 meter elite runner in England. Ian was the, I believe, English junior cross country champion. Swag had no interest in running cross country when he got here, but they told him he was going to have to. Ian, on the other hand, as Swag shared with me today, was very dominant his first cross country season here as a freshman in 1970. And Swag talked about a race where he and David will remember, I don't know about the young guys, Doug Brown, who ran at Tennessee, was an Olympian steeplechaser, but also a tremendous cross country runner down at Hobson Grove or Riverview Golf Course now. Went head to head, and Ian beat Doug Brown that day. But according to Swag, something at that point changed, and Ian did not have a very good spring and did not return for the fall of 71. Swag did come back for the fall of 71, and then in January of 1972, Nick Rose arrived. And Nick immediately ran that spring, and he and Hector, I think, both qualified for the NCAA championships that spring, in the spring of 72. Then it was just one after another, quite honestly, after that. Swag took a year sabbatical during the 72-73 school year and went to Boston for a year to just kind of hang out. But then, and in the fall of 72, it was a ragtag bunch of, Ross Monroe from Canada came in the fall of 71. And so we had Nick and Ross and then a bunch of ragtag guys. Dave Jaggers was here, a guy named Joe Feller from New York, Steve Smith from LaRue County. I arrived that year from Indiana, and I think it's fair to say we were all basically average runners at best when we arrived here, just average high school runners. But then in January of 73, Chris Riddler arrived. Let me go back to the fall of 72. A lot of times what gets lost about Nick Rose, everybody knows he was runner-up to Prefontaine in the fall of 73. He won the NCAA championship in 74 in cross country, and he was runner-up to Craig Virgin in 75 up at Penn State. What most people don't know is that in 72, Neil Cusack from East Tennessee State and Nick Rose were the two dominant runners through that fall. And at the NCAA championship meet, the two of them had separated from the rest of the field. And at about 5 miles, Cusack started to leave Nick. Nick, unfortunately, with about a half mile left in that race, blew out a calf and pretty much jogged in, and 7 people went by him in the last 200 yards, where he was basically walking to get in. That's how much the separation was with Cusack and Nick. So quite honestly, his 4 years, he should have been runner-up, national champion, and runner-up, which is one of the best you're going to find of anyone other than probably Prefontaine and a few others. But that was 72. Nick qualified as an individual. We did qualify as a team. Fall of 73, Tony Staines arrived. Swag came back. So you had Nick, Chris, Tony, Swag, Ross Monroe, myself, Steve Smith. East Tennessee State was loaded with Cusack and Eddie Letty back, and McBride, McGreely. I think Ray Flynn was still a year away from arriving, but they beat us in the OVC meet. But then we beat them at the regional meet, the NCAA district meet, but lost to William and Mary. But that qualified us, and I think to some people's surprise, to go to Spokane, Washington for the 73 NCAA championships. And it appeared we were going to be national runner-up until after the race, and Tony Staines was disqualified for running inside a flag. Quite controversial. There were several runners who, on a really tight turn early in the race, got shoved inside the flag. The judge at that corner admitted he only got 3 numbers, but that he estimated somewhere between 12 and 15 runners actually went inside, but they still went ahead and disqualified the 3 numbers he got and did nothing to the other dozen or so. So we went from finishing 2nd to 6th in the nationals. Had everybody coming back then in the fall of 74, with the addition then of Dave Long, who arrived from Bournemouth, England that fall, and go to IU for did not lose all year, won every meet through the OVC meet. Up through the OVC meet, Nick, Chris, Tony, and Dave Long finished first together in every meet, including the IU Invitational, the OVC conference meet, and then we went to the regional meet, won that pretty easily, and then went to IU, and basically Oregon had 4 guys running, just unbelievable, and we ended up finishing runner-up in the nation. Nick wins easily that day in 74. So I don't know if you want to take it up from there, or
Why don't you pick it up with 75 also? Because
Yeah.
you were redshirted with
Yeah.
injury, but you were in the middle of that.
yeah, 70. So basically, we were going to have everyone return again no, that's not true. Ross was going to graduate, but
Swag.
and Swag, but we were still going to have basically our top 5 guys back in the fall of 75. I got injured in the spring of 75. By the time the fall rolled around, Dave Long was running injured, Chris Riddler was running injured, really contemplating redshirting both of them as well. They did run, but went up to Penn State and I think finished 6th again, if I remember correctly, 5th or 6th. And Nick was national runner-up again in 75. And then Tom can take it from there in 76 in the trip to Denton, Texas.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So that gives you a little idea.
Thanks. So,
Yep.
I'm going to talk a little more. I'm going to talk a little more towards the camera here to look at the Zoom crowd.
We pretty much locked in there.
And right, so fall of 76, Nick was gone. Almost everyone else was back, and it was Richard Green was coming over from England on scholarship, and John Slaughter was on the team, and the 7th spot looked pretty much up for grabs, and I ended up getting it, I guess, with my legs. Beat this guy named Steve Carrigg from Oregon, a stranger. I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was running well.
You might add this to Richard Green to point out that he was actually a better runner in England than Murph, which is why he was selected and Murph ended up at Reno.
Okay, and I was not aware of that, but yeah,
Yeah.
Richard Green had great credentials over there and really didn't run well here that one year. But anyway, 1976, Coach Hessel's theme from early on is that we can get the runner-up trophy. And by saying that, he was conceding to UTEP, who did, I think UTEP had 6 of the top 19 finishers at the NCAA. And we had Tony, Chris, Dave Long back, John Slaughter, obviously up and coming. So we really had the chance to be quite good that year. And we won the conference. We were 4th at District 3, but only 10 points second. And we had 3 of the top 6 at District 3. Dave Long was 2nd, Chris was 4th, Tony was 6th. And so we still had a chance to do real well in nationals. Didn't go well. Dave Long didn't get out of bed the day before the race. He had like flu-like symptoms. Didn't go even jog the course or anything. And Dave, who finished 2nd in District 3, finished 155th at the NCAA meet. And the rest of us didn't run particularly well. We ended up 14th, which was a real disappointment. But that year, that race was kind of the coming out of Henry Rono. You know, Craig Virgin was the defending national champ. Rono and Samson Kamwamba of Washington State just blew Virgin away, you know, and the race went out so fast and it just distorted everything. So many good guys just broke because they went out too fast. Rono, it was noted, ran a time 28:06 that would have finished sixth in the Olympic final a few months earlier in Montreal. So I contend, I don't know this, but I contend that was probably the fastest, deepest 10,000 meter race in history, because 5-minute mile pace, you know, sub 31 basically, 5-minute mile pace, like 215 guys broke that. I don't know if that many men in the world ever could beat that kind of depth of a race. But anyway, it was I mean, people got sucked into the Henry Rono vortex, and so many people blew up and ran terribly because it just went out so fast. But that's 76, and after the 76 team, that's when we really lost. We lost, graduating was Tony, Chris Riddler, Joe Tinius, Richard Green didn't come back. Coming back from that team was Dave Long, John Slaughter, myself. And I show up in not very good shape for fall of 77. And the first thing Coach Hessel says to me is, Dave Long and John Slaughter are redshirting. And so it was kind of going to be me, Steve Carrigg, Jerry Senchowitz, and a bunch of freshmen. And as I've told many people, and what we're going to talk about here tonight a little bit by way of introduction, is that freshman class of 77 had enormous talent. They weren't ready for prime time in 1977, but they sure did have great careers as it went on. So we are here kind of to pay tribute to that class and everybody that was on that team that has joined us by Zoom, whether you were front of the pack or back of the pack for that particular year. We're glad to have everybody, and we want everyone to have a chance to just say a few words about their memories there. Not to be forgotten, although not part of that cross-country team, coming in January of that year was Dave Murphy and Larry Kazort together.
And Bill Gautier.
And Bill Gautier. And so that was some more real firepower. And that was really the year of transition from a great team led by Nick Rose to what also was a great team in the NCAA when these guys were seniors in 1980, before they all left. So 1977 was kind of the bridge year. I was team captain. We were awful. We finished like 14th in District 3, didn't come anywhere close to qualifying, and finished 4th in the OVC on our home course. Really one of the more depressing years of my life to go out that way as a senior. And the only saving grace was this great group of freshmen that we had. And man, we had a lot of fun, but we were bad. Again, we were bad as compared to what we were in the middle of for the history. You know, I have a bottle of water somewhere in my pocket. It looks like a stray bottle of water. Maybe I just put that.
I don't know, is that one?
We're gonna have somebody grab you.
Yeah, somebody can grab me a bottle of water. I'm drying out here.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'd like everybody, and some of you may have seen the video we did from 25 years ago when that team of 74 just all had a chance to share a few memories. Thank you. And so we'd like everybody, those of you on Zoom, those of you here that were on that team, to just say a few words of memory about not only the running days, but obviously the relationship that endured. And it really is, I think we're so lucky as a program, and certainly Neil Davis deserves big thanks for being the glue that's kept everybody together and kept these events organized. But the relationships we've kept really 40 years later is just really a treasure, I think, for me and for most of us. Very unique. And
Why don't we go around, Chris, Steve,
Yeah.
Paul,
Yeah, let's,
John, and Ron.
okay, let's start with the Zoom. Any of you Zoom guys gonna be, constrained by time? I mean, anybody need to be off in the next
No.
15 minutes?
No.
Okay, so those of you that are on by Zoom, we'll hear from you first. And then go to some of the guys that are present here.
Right.
Just starting, so Paul Chapman,
Mm,
you're still with us there?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Paul, as I recall, you only were with the team that year and you stuck around and graduated. And so why don't you just take 2 or 3 minutes of whatever memory you want to say to that WKU cross-country season as your freshman.
Gee, I don't know what to say. But it was a wonderful experience that one year. Don't regret it. Meeting everybody. I learned things. Even these guys taught me things about myself. To look back on it. I can say that with the egos that we had, Tom was probably the best choice for captain that there was. Sorry to embarrass you.
It's happening.
But I don't think Coach Hessel could have made a better choice than a captain for that year. He was good at keeping us all in line and trying to keep our heads on the ground. So.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you. Let's move on. I'm just going to kind of go clockwise here of who's on the screen. Steve Carrigg, as I indicated, came in at 76 and I guess was 8th man on that team.
Yeah.
Steve was not much of a talker. I know that he
remains.
He ran some of his best times after he left Western, after he graduated. Ran sub 30 10K. And so Steve, why don't you take a minute, just tell us what you're doing in life, what you've done in life, and reflect on the career here and even after you left.
Okay, I have learned to talk since then, but and I'd like to thank Neil Davis for keeping in touch for the last 43 years or so for me. He's kept, I know he's done that for everyone. And then, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I've seen Ron's face up there and I wasn't sure. And I'd like to go back to the fall of 76. Tom was talking about the competition between him and me. And Tom was one of the grittiest runners I ever ran against in that position. And he's right, I always ended up eighth man on the team because he was 7th man, or he was always just ahead of me, and he always managed to figure out how to do that. So I always admired that about Tom. It was great to be a part of this team, to come in, even though I came in just after the historical period. But one of the things that I remember in particular was I was a junior college transfer, and I was running on the Hobson Grove course, and Nick Rose was cheering for me, and he knew my name for some reason. And that was just one of the most remarkable things that, a young person like, a young runner could experience. Is part of the reason I went to Western was because of people like Nick Rose and Tony Stanings and Chris Riddler. And then to have Nick Rose stand there on the course and say, "Go Steve Carrigg," that just blew my mind. It was really fun. So yeah, it was a great time. Since then, I moved back to Oregon, where I grew up, and I've been here for most of the last 43 years, since 1978. And I have a couple of sons. I'm actually married to, my wife Susan is a University of Oregon graduate, and she ran track at U of O in the 80s. So that's, so that's still in the family a little bit. I don't know what else to say. It was really amazing to be back there. And one of the things is I had never traveled very much before I came to Kentucky. And to be able to travel to Indiana and Florida and Georgia, we went down to Furman, I think, and just places like that. It was really amazing to see the country and compete at the same time. So
Okay,
that's it for me.
That's great, thanks, Steve. So next, let me flip to the other side of the screen, because I didn't notice till a little while ago, John Zickel has joined us. And John, can we hear you?
John, you're muted.
John, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
There you go.
All right. So John was not freshman class of 77. John was, I think, a senior in 1974 when I arrived, and therefore he lived through the era that Joe talked about. But John, I don't think we ever got you recorded giving any memories. So you want to just take a few minutes and reflect.
Well, I feel like I've described this before, but I was a walk-on in 1971. Probably had no business running college, but ran with guys like Hector Ortiz, Swag Hartel, Nick Rose, Tony Stainings, Joe Tinius, Dave Jaggers, Stevie Smith, and those guys just welcomed me, made me part of the team, encouraged me. They were so kind and so nourishing. And I became a much better runner, and I ran for like 45 years, and I owe it all to the wonderful program that I was a part of, and I'll always be grateful.
All right, and John, you've been a teacher for oh so many years.
I was a teacher for almost 40 years, retired 2 years ago.
Okay. All right.
Did a little track coaching.
All right, John, thank you. Good to have you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll switch back to the other side of the screen. My old friend, Chris Payne, who I don't think I've seen you since I left in 1981, and only been on the phone a few times. You know, I was reflecting back and realized that really Chris Payne probably was just never a good fit for Western Kentucky, because he was always the ultimate decent, well-behaved guy. Just the ultimate decent, rational. And but Chris also went from my certainly, yeah, Chris and a few other guys were at the top of the list of guys who had to be the most frustrated by their careers here, because the injury bug just came up again and again when Chris worked so hard. And you know, when you're training with guys, you know how good they are when they're, and Chris really was a talent, and I don't think ever ran to his satisfaction, because the injury bug kept hitting him again and again when he was getting into really good shape. He was a transfer from Carson-Newman, therefore you were only eligible here for 2 years, right?
Right.
Oh, 2 or 3 years were you eligible, Chris? Here.
No, I just 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
I sat out in 1977. I was
Okay.
redshirted.
Okay, so let me just turn it over to you, and whatever thoughts you want to share with us, fire away.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. I want to thank Coach Chumley. Appreciate you. We've never met, but I appreciate this very much. And Neil, thank you for staying in touch. I'm not able to see everybody up close, so I'm sorry, but I see my friend Tim Brooks, and Tom, and I'm not able to, to focus in on too many.
This is my,
Let me, Chris, let me just read off who's in the room here. Behind Tim, there's John Deller, there's Mitch Settle, there's James Willoughby,
Oh,
there's Mike Clay,
okay.
there's Bob Stoner.
Oh, wait. Where's Mike Clay?
Right here. No more mustache.
his hair's not bleached.
I was in Fort Walton Beach last weekend, and I told my kids about Mike Clay, and when we first met, we were outside of the dorm, and you said that you had spent the summer moving umbrellas on the beach and how hard work it was. And I told him all about Mike Clay and your blue little car and I told him some other things I won't repeat. But, I don't want to take too much time. I would just say this, Tom. We only get one chance in this short life. It is very short, and we get one chance. And even though I was frustrated and other people, we didn't do what we thought was in us, maybe. What we were doing there at Western helped make us who we are. And it has carried on. And it's a very important thing. It was for me, because now I look back and I realize, my goodness, there's a lot of tough things that happen in life. And that was kind of one of the starts. And so all of you guys were important to me. I want to tell you something that I don't think I told you when I was there. One of the reasons that I was frustrated, and one of the reasons it was so important to me to be with you and trying to do my best, was I had a heart disease when I was a child. So when I was in 3rd grade, I developed rheumatic fever, and I had damage to my heart. So I didn't go to 3rd grade at all. I stayed in the bed all 3rd grade, and I had a lady that came to my house. And so 4th grade, I got to school, but I couldn't take physical education. I couldn't take PE. And so I had to lay on a cot in the back of the room when everybody else was playing and running and so forth. And 5th grade was the same way. And I got up off of my cot when everybody was outside and they were doing the presidential physical fitness, exam. You guys remember it. And they were running across a field. And I remember his name. His name was Kenneth Wetherington. He had a crew cut. And he was in 5th grade, and he was running across, and he was in the lead. It was a 600-yard dash, and everybody had colorful shirts on. And they were running, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I would love to do that. Well, I was in 7th grade, and finally the doctor said, okay, you can do whatever you want to do, but don't ever try to do any competitive athletics because you're not going to be able to. Well, so what did I do? I went out for track, and and so for me, I felt that God was with me then when I was in 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade, and I felt God was with me the whole way through high school, the opportunities I had in college, and what I should have done is appreciated it even more than I did. Because it was a dramatic change, in my life. So I've had a career now. I'm a president and CEO of a $600 million company, agricultural distribution company, that we're in, 42 states, and just so many things, good things have happened to me, and you guys are all part of helping me get to this point in life. So Tom, I'll turn it back to you. There's a lot more important, dramatic things in history that happened that I wasn't part of, and I'll let you continue. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Chris. I got to repeat 2 of the funniest things. Now, Chris was just the ultimate humble country boy. We all know that. He said 2 things that were so funny to me about, and I'm going to repeat them here. When he had this subtle way of claiming to be a great ladies' man. And he and his wife, Jerry, back then were, they were very good, somewhat faithful to each other. But 2 things Chris said. One of them, we were talking one night, and he was saying he could not believe how many of the guys on the team were always like, didn't have girlfriends, didn't have dates. He said if he didn't have a girlfriend and was on the campus like that, he would have dates every single weekend. And he couldn't believe what a bunch of losers the rest of you guys were. The other thing is, Chris got married on what, December 20th? Is that your anniversary?
22nd.
December 22nd, which he pointed out was the 2nd longest night of the year. And not too many men could have handled it. The 2nd longest night of the year. So So I don't know if you, Chris, those comments always stuck with me. And honestly, one day, one of these years, you've got to get up here and join us, all right?
Yeah.
Please do.
Right.
All right, so, all right, so now the only remaining guy on the screen is Ron Becht. I'm gonna kick him to a little bit later to let him talk, so Ron, just hang on. Let me just kick to the guys in the room here and.
It's not your turn yet.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Tom, can I say
Yeah.
one thing? I just
No,
got,
you froze,
That's
Ron.
appropriate.
one thing to say. If this is not, I'll need a lawyer. Did you freeze?
You keep freezing, Ron. What did you
Anyways,
say?
continue.
Okay. All right, so let's, Bob Stoner, where are you? Why don't you come up so you can get a little closer on camera here?
Yeah, that
Why don't
way
you just come on up? Why don't you come on up? So, I mean, we want this to be a watchable. Yeah. let's go. All right, so just come over. Yeah, stand over here, Ryan. So Bob was here for fall '76 through fall of '80.
Right.
And he mostly was, most of the time, training for the marathon.
Right.
Ran 2:32 was your best marathon. Just go ahead and whatever you want to say about those years. You're on.
Well, when I came here, well, the first bad thing that happened was when I came up for my visit, when Coach Bean was here, he didn't show up for the visit.
It's not a good sign, Bob.
But anyway.
Wasn't the first time that happened, Bob, trust me. For several events. But
But
anyway,
anyway, so,
another story.
but you know, the thing about Western, when I came here, I was an average high school runner. I did more field events and was more successful than that, but I always, I love the distance run. I just wanted to get better and better. And I came here to major in journalism, and it was the top journalism program in the country. So, but anyway, everybody was so good. And the training here, the atmosphere was unbelievable. And if you couldn't get better in this atmosphere, it was, you just weren't into it. But I mean, it was like each race, most of the practices were like races to me. And when I first got here, and I remember one time Coach Hessel made me take a week off just because my legs were shot that freshman year. But it just, Tom took me under his wing, and I run thousands of miles with Neil, and I learned to, I love just running the long distances, and got into the marathoning, and it was just great. And just for me to be able to say I went out for a 17-mile run and had fun, that was great. I loved it. But there's so many times in life when you be struggling and stuff, and you think about what you did here and how hard it was, but you got through it and it was fun, and you could, when you relate that to what some of the things you go through in life later, it was, from where I came from, it should be working in the coal mines. But I never had to do that, but my family did. But anyway, yeah, I had a blast here. It was just a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Let me cut over to John Deller. John, you were a local kid, right?
Yeah, I kind of.
Wait a minute, come on up here. We need a little more on camera. John was a guy that through the years, I was amazed. I thought you came in as like a 800 guy or something.
I actually came in from high school. I was a sprinter and hurdler. And then found out that the slower you are, the further you have to run. Of course, once I got here too, it was like a case of being in awe of the talent, and then great friendships made over the years. And it was just fun to go out. We were on support group and go out and run. You had problems, you talked about. I think we knew everything that happened in track and field news back in those days. And just a great time to get together in camaraderie, and we're all fighting for the same cause to get better. And it's great that we've been able to stay together and in contact. And once again, Neil gets kudos for that. For him and Tom both have done a great job keeping us together. Look forward to getting together every so often and catching up.
Yeah, I will say, John, for a guy that came here as a sprinter, John was a workout animal. I mean, he got to where he was doing 2-hour runs with.
Yeah, I trained with you some
And Tony, I mean, John backed down from no challenge.
I went from 120 yards to 15, 16 miles.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
All right. Thanks, thank you. I just got named on a list here. So I want to say some things about people who aren't here yet, but Mitch Settle.
Yep.
Why don't you come on up, and you came in also, part of that fall 77 freshman class.
Yep.
Go ahead. What about a limit of 1 hour, okay?
Couple claims to fame. I was 14 years old. I had Nick Rose, Chris Riddler, and Swag Hartel spend night at my house. That was a big deal because you guys, you should have been for Union 4 or 5 years. You just don't know what that era was like. But to have a guy like, I think Swag was actually in my room, and Chris and Nick were in the other room. We had just won the state championship cross country team, and my coach got Coach Bean to bring Nick to speak at our cross country banquet. I mean, in high school, it's just pretty incredible. And I think Neil and Bob and everybody else will tell you that it was just like having rock stars to run around. I was just an average runner. Those guys, it just raised your level. Just like anything you do in life, you want to be around successful people and you'll become successful. And you think about the year Tom was there, half the team could run a sub 4 minute mile. I mean, and you're coming on as Ron Becht ran like a 4:08 in high school. So it was just a huge privilege to me. My other claim to fame was 78, 79, sometime around there, we went to the NCAAs. I was the 7th guy on the team. George Connor and I were kind of fighting it out. I got sick. George got to run in my place under my names. And if you look in the NCAA record books, it was Mitch Settle, I think second to last. But it was George Connor who ran. Anyway, it was awesome. And I think of Ron Becht, man, what a super nice guy. And some of the other guys, there were so many great people to run with, but to have that depth of talent. And we were there when Nick and Tony and those guys were still around. I just remember how crazy Tony was, the parties and the drinking, and those guys would just go out and crush it every single day. And I hope you guys still run Hector's course. But I mean, those guys would go out and run it at 5:30 pace every single day. It was insane, but it was a great experience, and I've tried to leverage that, through my whole professional career. That's all I gotta say.
All right, man, thanks. Let me just make a few comments about a couple guys who are not here. One of them is Jerry Centrowitz. Jerry Centrowitz arrived the same year I did, fall of '74, and he himself would be the first to say that he got the short end of the Centrowitz gene pool, because his brother was American record holder at 5,000. Now his nephew has won the Olympic gold medal, and Jerry, no one was ever more self-deprecating than him, and he's made all kinds of jokes about where I guess the good Lord shorted him on talent as compared to the rest of his family. But Jerry was 10th man on a 10-man traveling squad when we were freshmen. I was 11, so if I ran, someone got hurt if I went on the road. But Jerry then really had a couple of down years, but he came back in '77 really in pretty good shape. And looking at some of the photos of him, he really was lean. You could see it was fit, and was top 5 finisher that year on any number of meets that we ran in. And Jerry was always a good guy, and always again kind of had the cynical, dark humor that had us all entertained on the van ride and everything. And he's been back only a few times since then, but Jerry, we wish he was here. Ron stayed close to Jerry through the years.
Hey, Tom?
Yes.
You just mentioned that 10-man traveling
Go ahead,
squad.
yeah.
There's a story about Tom, the 10-man traveling squad, that I think says a whole lot about Nick and Chris. In early October, we would go run the IU Invitational, and you could run 10 guys. And we had two track athletes, two Olympians who had arrived that fall. Bernd Herrmann from West Germany, who in 72 ran on the 4x400 West German relay team that medaled. And Richard Hopkins from Australia, who was a 100, 200 meter guy who'd been on the Australian Olympic team. And Coach Beam, for whatever reason, made the decision that he was only going to take 8 runners to IU and take Richard and Bernd Herrmann just to give them a chance to get out of town. They had just been here about 6 weeks. And when Chris Riddler saw that posted that only 8 were going and that those 2 were going, I remember he came to me and said, "What are we going to do about this?" And I said, "Well, I don't have the clout you and Nick have. What are you going to do about it?" And Tom didn't know it at the time, but Nick and Chris went into Coach Beam and said, "We've got guys who have been working hard, running 100 miles a week since the middle of August, who are our 9th and 10th runner. They go or we don't go." Now, they had the clout. I could have walked in, he would have said, "Stay home." But it to me, it was the essence of what Nick and Chris were all about. The comment earlier about, I think it was Steve made the comment about Nick at the race, knowing you by name and they're cheering for you. It didn't matter where you were on the ladder, if you will. Nick was there to support you. And I always remember that, the 2 of them going into Coach Beam. And as a result, I believe Tom and Jerry, right?
No, I would correct you. Jerry would have gone anyway. What happened is Jaggers was injured.
That's right.
And I would be next man
You've
up.
been next man up.
But then he was going to take 2 other guys.
So I just thought when you mentioned that about that 10-man travel squad, I just always remember that from the fall of '74. That here you got the eventual national champion and a guy who finished 8th or 9th in the NCAA championship. I think Chris was. Yeah. And they walk in and say, "No, our 9th and 10th guys are going with us to Bloomington, not 2 Olympians from another country."
Yeah, thanks.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a great story, and it was so touching to me because, believe me, I was nobody. I was nobody. I was a 10-minute 2-miler in high school, walk on, and I'd not done a thing in my life to deserve that kind of loyalty from teammates of that stature. So that touched me deeply, and it does to this day. And as I've said before, that was one interesting van ride from Bowling Green to Bloomington. I learned more than I wanted to learn that day. Anyway, thanks, Joe. That's a great story for me. It always has. Let me stay with. Okay, so let me turn to. This is more now getting into the guys that were the core freshman group that was most active in that year and the next year. Let me start off with Johnny Frazier, who we thought was going to be here until yesterday. And John was a freshman from West Virginia, and came in and was 5'4", weighed 115 pounds or something, just a little guy. And the thing about that freshman class, I think as freshmen want to do, you want to come and improve yourself from the beginning. And I was not in good shape. That would be I was not in good shape. And these guys were just going out on 14-mile runs, flying out the door and running their tails off. And I was back there wondering, what is going on here? But all of them in their own way, I think at different points, got burned out. I mean, they ran their legs off. And by October, these guys were dragging. And I remember Coach Hessel saying to me, "What do you think? How's Frazier doing?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "I haven't seen that kid smile in 3 weeks." I mean, but it was a great story because he was really kind of falling off the charts. The meets we were running, he wasn't in the top 5, top 7 sometimes. The OVC championships held here he was the first man home for Western. All of a sudden, Johnny Frazier just emerged out of whatever. Maybe he's got his leg back under him. He was the 15th man and our first man home. And that was really a show of his talent. Two things about him, since this is really being made for the record. If you look in the scrapbook, there was an article that was done on me during the homecoming edition of the Herald, and because I was the team captain, and they did this little story on me. And in the story, and this ended up being like a sub headline on the next page, Johnny Frazier told them that I was the father figure for the freshmen. Now, you know how tough it was for me with the dating life on campus already. Literally every girl I knew would come up to me and say, "Hi, Dad." And I could thank Johnny Frazier for that. But the girls on campus were calling me Dad for the rest of the year. But the other thing I didn't find out until last year, Johnny only was here one semester, came back in January for a week or two and left. Ended up running in West Virginia. But what I did not know till last year, and my story is one of getting into the marathon. And Coach Hessel told me in '76, after I kind of had a breakthrough year for cross country, if you do everything right, you can qualify for the 1980 Olympic trials. Which I did. And to do that, it took 4 years of, in 1979, I ran 4,600 miles. Okay, and that took all of my effort for 4 years to run a 2:20 marathon to qualify. Johnny Frazier leaves here after one semester, goes home and runs 2:19. You think that kid didn't have talent? Holy smoke, a 2:19 marathon after one semester in college. So John was a huge talent, and we'd be entertained if he was here to say a few words. So we were sorry that we missed him. The other guy I want to talk about who's not here, and I think his wife was planning to be here on Zoom, first personally, then by Zoom, is his wife, Chris Curl. As probably almost everyone here knows, Pat died. Pat died in 2014. Doesn't seem that long. Yeah. But Pat was a character. He transferred in also from a Clackamas community where Steve Carrigg came from out in Oregon. And Pat was a guy that would do anything to get a laugh out of somebody. He was a bit of a flake. In the OVC championship meet here, which we hosted that year, Bob Swan, our leader, went down. He slipped on wet grass, went down, wrenched his back. He couldn't run. Pat loved telling this story. Coach Hessel said, "Pat, you're on."
Bob was there for the story being done.
Okay, as was Tim Brooks, I believe.
Tim, you were
Tim was
there
too.
that morning.
Yeah.
Because we did something,
Yeah, so
smart that morning.
the point is, these guys, knowing that they were going to be spectators, did some drinking that morning.
Yeah. Before we went to the meet.
Before they went to the meet, and Pat shows up, ready to watch the meet, and suddenly he's told, "Pat, you're on. You're replacing Bob." And this can only happen to a flake. Pat runs the best race of his life. Pat's the fourth guy home for Western, and loved telling the story that his greatest race was after 8 beers or something. But a story, one story I love telling about Pat, it was somewhere probably in late September, we've done a 14-mile Sunday morning run, and we're all coming in straggling at different times, and we're out at Cumberland Trace School, I guess, where we used to run from. And we're still waiting for other guys to come in, and Pat is standing off on his own with his T-shirt. And we had the typical Saturday night party at Tony's house, right? So some beverage was drank the night before. And Pat's standing there just wringing out his T-shirt, just 1 inch at a time, just slowly wringing it out. And I think, what is he doing? Curl just, and I walk around, we're, cooling off. I look over, Pat's another 6 inches down on it, just wringing. He's just standing like in a puddle of perspiration as he's wringing out every little inch of his T-shirt that he just sweat in. Finally, I get I go up there and say, Carl, what are you doing? And he looks up at me, looks away, sees Coach Hessel's out of earshot, and he says, beer, anyone? But that was, he would do anything for a cheap laugh, but he was a lovable guy, and we lost a good soul 7 years ago. So, let me turn back to some people who are here. Well, now let's start with Bob Swan, who's not here. Bob was a freshman from England, this freshman class of 77. Bob clearly had a lot of talent. As a freshman, he finished 9th at the Indiana Invitational. The most memorable thing about Bob, I don't know that I remember anybody coming in and I feel like I stayed here a total of 7 years. So I was here 74 through 81. I saw the best of both sides of that era. I came just at the right time to see everything. I never saw a guy on this team come in and just with his personality impact the campus like he did. He had that grin from ear to ear. He was always smiling, and everybody seemed to know him within about a month. He really just was one of the all-time good guys and a great personality that, like Chris Payne, like a few others, the injury bug just kept getting him at the wrong time. And again, he had to miss the conference championship because he hurt himself 30 minutes before. And he only stayed 3 semesters. And the next year he came back, was in really good shape, got injured again. I think it was a deep strain or something that wasn't healing very quickly. And he decided, by about Thanksgiving or so, that he wasn't going to come back. And that was, I think, really a tragedy for the team because of what Bob brought. And I realized then, the guy who came here and was always grinned from ear to ear, I realized I hadn't seen him smile for 3 months. He was so unhappy being injured, and he couldn't even go to the meets. It was too painful for him to go to some of the meets even to cheer the guys on. So Bob was a great guy in a short career here and ran a few really good races.
Did he ever run after that?
Yeah, he ran very
Yes.
well.
Tim and I went to England in 82, and we visited Bob over there. And he had gotten away. He had run I remember saying he ran a sub 50-minute 10 mile. And he had done some good running, and then when he was in really good shape, he broke his ankle. And
You're
so
right. He was a super nice guy.
yeah, so Bob was a guy that never really took off here. It's a shame. And so I think I've touched on everybody that's not here. So let me turn to the people that are here. And let's just start, Mike. I'm going to go to Mike Clay. Mike, there is no doubt, Mike, and I'm sure I'm right about this. Mike had the most underrated, unappreciated career achievements for a cross-country runner of anybody that's ever been through the program. Mike came in, did some good running as a freshman, did some poor running as a freshman. A very wobbly first semester, had some really good runs. But in the course, by the time he was a senior, he was one of the 5 guys that ran to a 5-way perfect score, winning the OVC cross-country championship. And Tim Brooks figured out, and we think this is probably right, Mike is the only American that, for Western Kentucky, scored in the NCAA meet 3 years in a row. We thought through all the Americans, and we couldn't think of anybody else that did that. So Mike did it very quietly. Mike wasn't a loudmouth. His personality got kind of lost sometimes in the crowd. But Mike had an impressive career. And the other thing, I want to say 2 things about the marathon, since that's dear to my heart. When we were looking at trying to qualify, Neil was, of course, a valiant training partner. When we were looking to qualify for the Olympic trials in 1980, one option was to go to the New Orleans Marathon, the Mardi Gras, where the word was most of the time there's a tailwind and you're running 24 miles across Lake Pontchartrain with a tailwind. And I didn't want to go. I didn't feel good about that seemed to delegitimize it if you could do it. I ended up going to Oak Ridge where it never snows, that side of the mountains in February. And I was able to qualify there. But I set that up because Mike went to the Mardi Gras Marathon a couple years later. And that year there was a headwind. And Mike led the race, I believe, 24 miles into that headwind until one or two guys maybe overtook him. But it was a classic Mike Clay bulldog moment. Just put your head down and just keep charging. And Mike ultimately, a couple years later, I didn't know this till yesterday, he was in medical school and he ran a 2:20 marathon and just missed the standard for the 84 trials. So Mike was a relentless bulldog as a runner, and I probably can't say enough about him. Mike, come on up. Have your say here. You had a great career, and as I said, I think it was underappreciated.
Yeah, I came from Florida. Tim. From Panhandle, I had a really good coach, and we watched Nick Rose and the Western team, and so I just like most of the people that came here, that legacy was what I wanted to be a part of. So I came up here, walked on, knew that with running against those kind of guys, that hey, I'm going to be back to back, and worked hard just to be around those guys and to run the best I could. And my tradition of running started with in high school, continued through Western. And I still run now. Don't compete anymore. After that 2:20, I thought it's just going to get slower. So I said I retired then and spent my time competing with the Air Force mile and a half to maintain my fitness score. That was about it for competitive racing. But enjoyed my time. Enjoyed running with everybody that was here. And valued those friendships and those people I met, and be able to run, and even the workouts were phenomenal. Not just the race, our workouts. We went out, and some of those workouts were incredible. And just to feel that good and run that fast, even in a workout, this is awesome. And so, yeah, it was an awesome 4 years, and I'll never forget it.
All right, thanks, Mike. James, you and I both had our say, even though I'm doing a lot of talking here years back when I got on record, but that was your senior year too. Anything you want to say about it? I know, he was a half miler, he hated cross country. Let's get all that out of the way. But James, you gotta have some memory or two you want to say about that.
I did not like the 15-mile runs.
Yeah.
And there's a little story that Tom knows about, and some of the others. One morning at 6 a.m., Coach Hessel took us out to Cumberland's race for a 10-mile run, 6 a.m.
Keep your voice up a little bit.
Okay, 6 a.m. in the morning, and I hated it, every step of it, there and back. We came back in, he had donuts and orange juice for us. I guess he felt guilty, got the guys up 6 a.m., they ran 10 miles fast, and they'll appreciate this. I was so mad that I got the donuts and threw them in his car. And they exploded. I was an 800 meter runner.
Okay.
I do, though, want to give an accolade to Nick Rose. Some people have mentioned already that he was very supportive of everyone. But the greatest thing I remember about Nick Rose was the fact I had never met an elite athlete in any sport that was as humble as him. He didn't talk about his races. He let his races talk for themselves. Contrary to the way Tony Stannings was. Only to let you know what he did. And sometimes exaggerate what he did. But Nick was a humble and a friend of everyone, and everybody knows that met him, and just an absolute jewel of a person. And so I consider myself probably one of the luckiest people on the face of the earth. I was more of a track runner than a cross country runner. but I ran on the cross country team and was involved in those years when those championships were being won and those high places in the NCAA championships. And strange thing happened. State track meet was usually held on the track at the University of Kentucky. They were doing some repair work on it in 1974. So the state track meet was actually moved to Bowling Green for that year. And I had won the 800 in the regional and ran on a pretty good 1600 meter relay team. So state championship was here. And I heard nothing from Western, about coming and running for them. And I ran that day and won the 800. And we did real well in the 1600 relay. And right after the race was over, now don't tell anybody, it's maybe an NCAA violation. I was approached by the coaching staff that offered me a scholarship right after the race, the 1600 meter relay. And Mama didn't raise any fools. James said, yes, you'll pay me to run for you. You'll give me a place to sleep. You'll give me food to eat. You'll take me to races. Yes, I'll do it. I live close to Murray State. I wanted to go to Murray State, but their offer wasn't nearly as good. So anyway, that's how I ended up here. And boy, what did I walk into? It was unbelievable. As high school athletes, y'all were probably pretty good athletes in high school. And you placed high, you were all staters, you won championships and state meets and all that. So you think you're pretty good when you get into the college campus and start running. I was running with Olympians. I found out I wasn't very good at all, but worked real hard, ran every day, tried to do my best. But boy, there was no replacing those relationships that I said. Matter of fact, this is my roommate for 3 or 4 years. And that's why he was such a good team captain. I prepared him. I told him how to approach the athletes and the people on the team and how to keep everyone loose and encourage everyone. So I hate to take credit for that, but
Okay, well, I hate to sober you up, but it was that if I could put up with you, I could put up with anybody.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But it was great. And just being around those guys, what can I say? You had to be there to experience it to understand it. People that could do basically anything they wanted to for entertainment and come out the next day and train like an animal and beat everyone in the country. I mean, what kind of talent is that? Unbelievable. Thank you.
Tom, I remember when I was a freshman on campus, and you can't say enough about the British Brigade, but I remember every Saturday, remember the show Wide World of Sports? And for you young guys, it was kind of the only sports station. Every weekend on Saturdays, Nick Rose was racing somewhere indoors. I'll probably bundle this guy's name, Solomon Nyambui. I just remember that name. And seeing that guy on national TV, Monday morning, he was hanging out in the student center. I mean, if that doesn't fire you up, I mean, those guys are just incredible.
He wouldn't say anything about
No,
being on TV.
no.
He wouldn't talk about being on TV or winning a championship.
But
We don't need to think
it was
about
just so inspirational.
Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna move on to my old friend Tim Brooks, who came up from Fort Myers, Florida in fall '77. I didn't know what to think of him as the year went on. The cross-country season, he showed some talent at times, other times he was nowhere. He clearly was at best 9th man on the team, because when Swanee went down, it was Pat Curl that replaced Bob, not Tim. So down there in the 9th or 10th man range. And for the team, 9th or 10th man on the team. A year later, he was 2nd in the conference. And Tim came home, decided he was going to come home to Cincinnati with me to train that summer before his sophomore year. And some housing options just didn't look very good. And my parents said, well, let's just let Tim live with us. which meant him coming under the same roof as my 7 sisters. And they did their best to civilize him, but it didn't work. And, but I'll tell you, I was training with him every day, twice a day. And it was amazing to watch him bloom. By the end, we went to a road race up there where one of the really good guys in town I remember they were running up front a little bit clear of me. And they took a left-hand turn, and all of a sudden I see Brooksy moving away from this guy who was you know, a legitimate guy runner. And I thought, holy smoke, what's happening here? That was like July 4th. And Brooksy comes back and is just running like a rocket and finished second in the conference. And just that transformation in 1 year was amazing, watching talent bloom like that. We just had to get him to work a little bit. And but anyway, he also was bit by the injury bug that kept him really from probably consistently running that quality through his 4 years. But ran some good times along the way and ran the NCAA meet a number of times. But Brooksy, you're on.
All right, well, you guys have covered pretty much everything tied, but you know, really getting here, it was the young guys in the back. It was like hitting a bunch of rock stars. I mean, the Rose era and stuff in that area, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I didn't want to make mistakes. I want to say that, you know, for anybody who's trying really hard, you know, don't maybe wherever they're at in their life. So I just want to run a fast mile. I didn't run a fast 6 mile. I'm like, that was a long distance for me. I don't want to be a mile like James. So anyway, Steve, I started as 8th. I finished as 8th. I related to that. Chris, the tenacity that you're talking about earlier, you know, the things you learn through the running, that tenacity you'll carry through your life forever. You know, the things you'll run into, you'll have so much faith in yourself to attack those things and know that what you did here will overcome anything you'll do there. You'll be successful. You'll make a relationship with your married sisters, you know, not his sisters, but anyway, just so many great things. But yes, the, you know, going from really an 8th, 9th man on that freshman year, the next year of just being tenacious. Tenacious is the word that I would take and throw to everybody here. If you want to really focus on something and be tenacious about it, which these guys were, all these guys were, you can be very, very, very good, and maybe you'll find you very great. Okay, take that, run with it. Now, don't run with it too far. In some cases, Mike and I were talking, so I'm the poster child for pushing an injury too hard for too long. Because once you touch something, you just want more of it. So be smart about it, okay? But you have the ability to do whatever you want to do. You know, train the summers. I spend every summer here training. The guys, but the Brits so great, and I wanted to go to England, but I didn't have the money. I'm going to get on a boat and I get seasick. All right, to get over there, but they would do it year round. So everybody else went home. I stayed in Bowling Green. You know, Tom took me home with him in that freshman year. You just grind it, you know, you just worked at it. And I'm not sure what kind of faith you have in yourself, you know, and I'm talking to you young guys, but you want to win the conference, you want to, you know, maybe play some WAs, it's in your grasp, but you just got to be willing to put that work in. And we had a great group of people. Iron sharpens iron. You got some guys you can train with, train together, stay focused. We had something that I thought about just a moment ago, our freshman year, we call tunnel vision. Now, this would usually come after a race at Tom's discretion as the father figure, where you'd be dancing and jumping at Tony Stanning's place with a couple beers in our hands after a long, you know, long drive back from a track cross-country meet, getting that bit of the stress, but tunnel vision was the word. So anybody who wants to be great, take that with it, tunnel vision, tenacity, it's right in your grasp. It's just take everybody. Nice.
Thank you, Tim. So at this point, we're down to 1, and a special moment we're going to have with Neil Davis here shortly. But the remaining guy from that team is Ron Becht, an old dear friend who for so many years annually came down faithfully to have, whether it was just a reunion with me, Ron, and Neil, And that happened a few times, just 3 of us. Ron always came down from Canada, came in as a freshman from Canada back in 1977. I gotta say a few things about Ron. Ron was a 407 miler in high school. He came down. Ron's one of those personalities that's kind of like Clark Kent Superman. You know, he's low key, humble. Someone referred to the egos on that team. As these guys became sophomore, junior, seniors, a lot of egos clashing among that group. A lot of talented guys, a lot of high achievers. I was still around. There's no doubt Ron Becht was always the most valuable guy on the team because he was the hub that kept everybody close, that kept everybody together. Everyone had to respect Ron. He never said a bad word about anybody. His work ethic, unparalleled. His talent, you know, he left here and ran a sub 4-minute mile. And I don't know where that team would have gone sometimes with some of the super egos that were on that team if Ron wasn't there to keep everybody grounded. Now, I'll tell you, Ron also had kind of that mentality of Willoughby. Hey, I'm a miler. I don't want to run 5Ks. I don't want to run cross country. Ron's freshman year, Coach Hessel at one point declared outdoor track season, Ron's going to run the 5K at the Dogwood Relays. Ron was mumbling and grumbling and groaning the whole week. Blah, 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 blah. I don't want to go. He goes to the Dogwood Relays, qualifies for the NCAA. Comes back grumbling, mumbling, hassle this, hassle that. But that was one of the signs of Ron's real talent. And then, of course, after he left here, he had to run between 4 minutes and 4:03 about 24 times. But that finally went sub 3. What was Ron? 3:58.6?
3:59.1.
3:59.1. I'm going to invite you to just talk about that 4-minute mile a little bit because it's a great little part of history, I think, for Western. But the other thing Ron did was ended up running, again, probably mumbling and grumbling the whole one. The guys in Canada basically recruiting to run on their team for the World Cross Country Championships. And I think Ron didn't make the cut or wasn't going to go. And one guy got sick and they called him up. This is when it was in the Meadowlands. In 1984, was it?
Yes.
Ron? Yeah. So Ron begrudgingly goes and runs the World Cross Country Championship for Canada. What were you, 4th man home for Canada?
I was 3rd man home after being the alternate.
Yeah, he was first, he was the alternate, then he's the 3rd man home. I tell you, I cannot say enough, and I'm not afraid to make Ron blush. I cannot say enough about what a great and humble athlete Ron Becht is. And everybody that knew him knows that to be true. So Ron, I've said all the good things I can say about you.
Can I say something bad about him first?
Go ahead. Neil wants to cut you down, Ron, so.
Well, no, I just point out that Ron didn't like that. That's why he got home so fast to get it over with.
Okay, all right. So Ron, I know you're not a talker and you don't like to shine a lot of attention on yourself, but you had a great career here. Talk to us about some of that.
Well, first of all, thanks, Coach Chumley, for hosting this. And Neil, your yeoman duty in getting everyone together. I retired 1.5 years ago and headed down to Bowling Green, Cincinnati, thinking, great, this is the first of many visits. Well, we know what happened there. I haven't been down since. And I'm not sure when I'll be down again, but I can't wait to get back down and see everyone south of the border. When I first was recruited by Western, I was a late registrant. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go because it was too overwhelming for me. You think you want to leave a little legacy, but I didn't see there was a way I could. Western to me was a cross-country school, great distance program. It wasn't a fit for me. So I was going back and forth, and it was my mom who said, try it for a year. If you don't like it, come home. So she's the one that gave me the push to come down. And it turned out pretty good, even though that NCAA experience my freshman year was a nightmare to the point where I wasn't going to come back. And I think I told Tom that I wasn't coming back after that. I ended up in Henry Rono's heat, Rona runs an NCAA record in the heat, and I get lapped almost twice, and that was it. I was done. I guess the time, back home made me reflect and say, I got to give it another chance. And I'm sure glad I did, because the memories are priceless. And, the one thing I'd like to say too, our freshman year, we were not ready for prime time. And I think I told Tom, and maybe not, but Tom, you sacrificed a year where you were our mentor and our leader. You didn't have to run. You could have come back a year later and been on some NCAA teams. And that's one thing I'll never forget, and I'll always appreciate. And I think we all will always appreciate your sacrifice to show us the way. And you sure did.
Thank you, Ron. Hey, Ron, could you told me somebody said something to you when you were so down, because the NCAA experience you were talking about was the 5K, right? You
Yes.
The 5K, and someone afterwards said something to you from Western's team that was so encouraging to you.
It actually was Richard Hopkins of all people.
Yeah.
He came up to me after, and he said, and Richard didn't throw many compliments, I don't believe. He said, count the freshmen at this meet. There's not many. So that's one thing I took home with me. And I think there was maybe 5 or 6 that year freshmen in the distance races. So that was something, hearing from Hopkins was pretty special. And like I said, it was a cross-country program. I think I was a better cross-country runner than I gave myself credit to. When I ran the World Cross Country Trials out west for Canada, I was approached by my coach, Dennis Farrell, who passed away last year, which is still heartbreaking for me, and Paul Roberts, who was our Nike rep. And they talked me into going by offering me gear. So I kind of prostituted myself to go out west. And before I left, they both came up to me and said, at least you got to try. We don't want you jogging. Anyways, it turned out pretty well. I finished 10th, went to training camp in Florida, where I found out I was selected to the team because of injury issues with the program. And was something I'll never forget. I never thought I'd ever be running cross-country worlds in the shadows of, the New York City. And as for my sub-4-minute mile, it was out west. One of the feature runners was Eamon Coughlin. He was prepping for his World Championship 5K later that year. He came up to everyone and said, I'm looking to run 353, 354. You guys feed off it, whatever you want. And then it turned out 8 of us broke 4 minutes, including Canada's first high school kid, who finished at 358. So I'll fess up to that. And I've always, that was always my mountain to climb, to see if I could run under 4 minutes. And it was sure satisfying, and something I'll remember forever. But again, Tom, you led the way, you showed us the way, and I certainly appreciate you sacrificing your senior year to run with us, and because we weren't ready for prime time.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say hi to Mike. Hey, Mike, I haven't seen you forever, and I wish I was down there.
Yeah, I was caught up in the military for 28 years, and so just traveling around.
Okay, Ron, thanks a lot, man.
No, thank you, guys. I wish I was down there. Tell Biden to open the borders.
I tell Ron we've got to get him out permanently out of that communist country he's living in. All right, so we've not yet mentioned Neil Davis. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over to Coach Chumley for a presentation that we've anticipated for a while. I said this should be done on the record, and that's why we're going to do it now. I do want to say about Neil Davis personally that I know that Neil's fastest marathon, Neil laughs when he came to campus, and he and I were training together fairly early on there, just in the cross country meet. At one point I turned to him and said, welcome to the team. There's finally somebody here with leg speed worse than mine.
Welcome to Bowling Green. Now I'm no longer the slowest person in town.
It was something like that. But Neil, for me, as I converted to the marathon and was pointing towards the 1980 qualifying standard, Neil was absolutely indispensable. I don't know, it's made really doubtful whether I would have qualified without Neil, who was always willing to go for a run, day or night. I could call him, I say, at 11 PM, I could call him and say, I need to go do 5 miles. He'd say, I'll be down in 10 minutes. And off we'd go for a midnight 5. And just absolutely indispensable. Neil's best marathon for the record was 2:32, right? 2:31. 2:31.
31.
And I will say, as his training partner, there were times when Neil, there's no doubt, if he had the right race on the right day, would have run sub 2:25, maybe sub 2:23. There's no doubt he was in that kind of shape as a training partner. But, you know, for the marathon, you need the right day where everything goes right. So he's sitting at a 2:31, but he was a lot better than that. And having said that, in this post-graduation, 40 years of alumni get-togethers, Neil's been indispensable. And the other thing, Neil said to me, this is why this presentation is really important to me too. Neil said to me, he never really felt like he was part of the team because he never traveled. He was never one of the top whatever to score points or do anything. And he never really felt like he was part of the team. And that was really touching to me because Neil was in some ways central to the team. He was the most enthusiastic lover of track and cross-country running and distance running. And he was just at the center of every conversation. And the thought that he didn't think he was on the team was really touching to me. And so when the idea came up for this presentation, I said, let's do this on the record. So Coach, you can take it from here.
Well, I guess by happenstance, I'm the one doing this. Doc Edwards wanted to be here tonight. Yesterday, for the first time, he experienced vertigo. So he's at home trying to be safe right now. So this falls as an honor to me. And let me tell each of you that wearing this WKU on my chest is an honor for me. It is also, especially in this room, quite the challenge. I don't know that any school is going to get back to where WKU was once with distance running, but we're sure as heck going to try. Luckily, we've got people that are dedicated to it now. People that are here tonight are dedicated to what we're doing. But with that being said, Neil Davis, one of the first men I met as I got here and took over. And, as a director of a program, of course, you want the fast group, you want the great throwers, you want the great jumpers, you want all those people, but you always want that person with the intangibles. You want that person that a team cannot go without. If you're not the fastest, if you're not the best jumper, that's okay. There's something about some people that you have to have them on the team. They have to be there or everything else doesn't work. Okay, and it sounds like Neil maybe didn't see that when he was an athlete here, but obviously Tom and some of the other guys from things that I've heard, they certainly saw that Neil is one of those intangibles that you have to have if you're going to be a great program. I have yet to meet, and not to make this as a challenge for anybody, but I have yet to meet or talk to anybody that loves WKU, cross country, track and field more than that man right there. I mean, it's my living, that's my paycheck, but it is his passion. It is his he came to the outdoor track meet last year. He brought his RV on the way home from vacation. I don't know if his wife liked that a whole lot, but they brought the RV, backed it in there at the track and tailgated for 2.5 days at the track meet. And you just don't find people like that. You don't find people with that passion. You don't find people with that love. You don't find people with that dedication, especially to something that was, we'll just say over 25 years ago. I don't want to put a label on it.
You could say 42.
42 years ago. You know, I mean, that's something special. That's something that I hope the kids in the back, that's something that I hope they feel, that's something that they get out of their college experience. I don't know what standards were back in the day for awarding letters and letter jackets. But the way it's written out now, the head coach always has the option to give a letter jacket to somebody that they feel is above and beyond deserving of being that representation of WKU. And I think from my experience, and I couldn't do any of this stuff without Neil. With my experience, I think he embodies exactly what we want that WKU letter winner and representative to be. So, with all that being said, this might be a little bit overdue.
Or overdone.
Or overdone. I don't know.
Can you guys get on camera? Get on camera.
Okay. So we'll get on camera with this. We've got a nice letter jacket here for Neil. I know it's warm in this room. Well, come over here, buddy. Come over here.
Chris, I forgot and took off my Carson-Newman one.
Yeah, that one looks good.
There you go.
So,
There go Neil.
Okay.
3, 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Well deserved.
All right, Neil. Neil, say a few words, man.
Just a few.
Hey, Ron, should we let Neil start talking?
Just a few, but you know, when I get down there, I'm gonna buy him a couple of milkshakes and sundaes in his honor.
would you sell for a few words?
A few words.
I just did. That's it. Come on, man.
Oh, come on, Neil, say something.
I don't have anything to say.
1 hour.
Neil's speechless.
Yeah. Neil Davis is speaking.
I
never been speechless.
I'll just throw some big words at us.
No, I mean, I can't thank Bill Edwards and Coach Chapman enough. I guess it's Katie Tenius' fault. You were interviewing someone, who knows how long ago, 90 something. Ron and I and Mark Staines were sitting around waiting for you to get finished, and she said, join the W Club. And I said, I can't, I didn't. And she said, oh, well, go ahead anyway, we'll take your money. And so I made my application, and it was to Bill Edwards, and Bill and I knew each other a lot for all the time I was in the training room while he was assistant trainer. And I said, on there, I said, well, you know, I was a participant in these things, but I never lettered. And Bill said, well, you're in the training room enough, I'll give you an honorary trainer's letter. And I said, okay. And then, and that was that. So in December, I got a text or an email from Bill, and he said, I got Coach Chumley's order, and would you like me to get a letter jacket for you? And I said, well, I don't think that would be appropriate. And he said, well, I think it is. And I said, well, okay, let me ask some people. So I asked Longy, because we know how opinionated Dave Long can be. And he and I had trained together a bit. And I asked Tony and Tom, and they all were not offended by me being lettered. So I said, okay, and I cried. Just like I'm about to cry now.
All right. Well, all right, well, I think that kind of wraps up the agenda I had, which is kind of run the history as far as we can. Again, I guess, you know, this class of 77 we talked about, we didn't go to the NCAA that year. The next year, Larry Kazort, Dave Murphy became eligible. Jim Groves came in as a freshman, won the conference. his career was felled by injury, sadly also after a couple good years. But what were the Westerns finish in the NCAA starting fall of '78? Was it 14th, 22nd, and then 6th? Something like that?
6, 12, and 22nd. 20, we were, yeah, 22nd.
22, 12, and 6, Tom.
In that order?
Yeah.
Okay, so fall of '78, 22nd, fall of '79, 12th, fall of '80, 6th.
Right now, Murphy and Larry weren't eligible at fall '78. It was Brooksy and John Graham, Longy.
Graham went there.
Well, no, he dropped out. I mean,
That's
he
right.
didn't show up for.
They weren't
he left
'79.
No, that's right. But Murphy and Larry transferred in after their sophomore cross-country season, so they
Right.
only had 2 seasons left. So that was
Yeah.
79 and 80.
Right,
Okay,
right.
all
But
right.
that '78 team was pretty good.
All right, so I guess the final thing I would say is for the younger runners here on this team, Western has not qualified for the NCAA
As a team.
as a team for now 21 years, or
No,
41 years.
Well,
So-
40. There's still 21 to
Okay.
qualify this year.
40 years, so we're throwing down the gauntlet. Guys, get us back there.
If you go, we'll all show up.
We'll be there.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, we'll be there.
Let me say one thing about that. All that talk of the parties and the drinking and the running.
Yeah,
running extra
none of that was
weekends.
true. None of the drinking stuff
Those were
was
just
true.
embellished stories.
Yeah.
Soft drinks, no beer. No beer.
All right,
Vitamin water.
Zoom guys, anything else you want to say? Chris, Steve, Ron?
I just got one. Go ahead, Chris.
No, just thank you. It's good to see everybody. Best wishes to you.
All right,
See you,
thanks,
Chris.
Chris.
I just wanted to say
Go ahead, Ron.
I just want to say the most valuable and important takeaway from this is that the lifetime friendships, which are just, unbreakable bonds forever. We're all family, including the new regime, and we're all toppers. And thanks again for putting this on.
Steve, anything else?
Thanks for putting this on. It was great to be here.
All right, we'll get this is recorded, so we should get it out in some video format for everyone to have a record of this.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Every year that goes by, we get better and better. Unfortunately, they did keep records.
I was gonna say, until we look at the
Yeah,
record book.
right. All right, guys, thanks again.
See you guys.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Gentlemen, somebody eat that pizza.
Before it gets cold.
Well, it's cold, but there's a lot of it in there.
We are running.
That's why
We'll let him run and go first. Those young guys, it takes the whole.